Hey everybody, it's Curse, and today I'm going to bless you with my dual core double swing Hoda build guide. This build is really strong because it gives you 100% uptime on vulnerable. And that is generally the biggest weakness to Hoda. It doesn't have a reliable way to proc vulnerability. It relies either on the 30% lucky hit chance with a core skill or on a 20% proc chance from Flay. Both of these are not super reliable. It also gives you great Fury sustain if you have at least one stunned enemy that you're hitting, thanks to double swing. Whereas other Hoda builds, when you don't have triple shouts up, you have very weak Fury sustain. In the case of this build, even without triple shouts, we can keep DPSing just as well as long as there's at least one stunned enemy. And given that we have really strong stun procs coming from our items and our skills, proccing stun on elites is very reliable with this build. So this build has a much more consistent and reliable DPS compared to the usual Hoda. Let me walk you through it. Irashaimase! Alright, let's start with the skills first. And I'll highlight that there are two different ways you can set up this build. The first is what I have right now, and that is where you try to get DPS out of both double swing and Hoda. In this setup, your itemization and your skills are going to be slightly different than if you try to go for purely DPSing with Hoda and double swing just being utility, with mostly just vulnerability being 100% uptime and just tons of fury when the enemy is stunned. So let's see how I've set it up right now. I've maxed out Hoda, I've maxed out double swing both, and then you go for vulnerable and as well as furious Hoda, and this is what makes the build really furious Hoda. We're running triple shout, so 1-1-1 on all three shouts. For challenging shout, I maxed it out because it's got a really good return with damage reduction going up, but I'm not getting any of these extra skills points. For Rallying Cry, I chose to go with Strategic Rallying Cry because I don't really have a source of Fortify right now. We already get Max Fury when Rallying Cry is up, so Tactical Rallying Cry doesn't really give us that much, to be honest. War Cry gives us a little bit of extra damage, and this is our source of Berserking, one of our primary ones. We have a few other ones as well, but this is a really good source of Berserking right here. And then we go Booming Voice. We don't need Raid Leader. I'll show you why later on down the skill tree. Max Move Speed, DR, as well as Prolific Fury. And then I keep debating with myself whether I want Hamstring or not, whether I want to slow enemies or not. On the one side, it does trigger No Mercy. On the other side, we already have a ton of stun sources to trigger No Mercy, and slowing enemies actually makes it triggers their unstoppable faster. If you don't know, if you apply enough CC on enemy elites, eventually they become unstoppable. And so Hamstring adds to those CCs that enemy elites count towards their unstoppable meter. So I'm not sure that we want it. I'm trying a few different setups, but yeah, the primary reason why you might have this is so that in combination with bleeding, you can apply slow to the enemies and have No Mercy be triggered, and that's an extra 9 to maybe up to 18% crit chance if you max it out. Currently I have a +3 from an amulet right here. I have 1 point with Pit Fighter, but really the most important part of the skill tree is right here around ultimates. I mean, yeah, we get Wrath of the Berserker, but what I want to highlight is, first of all, Wall Up, which gives us a ton more damage, multiplicative for our Hoda and for our double swing, because we make sure that we're using one bludgeoning weapon for double swing as well. So there's a 1.15 times multiplier. And then here we get one of our sources of stun. A really strong source of stun right here. We can also go 3 in heavy-handed. This is not necessarily mandatory, but it does increase the Hoda damage quite a bit. Unfortunately, it does not apply to double swing. So you could take this out and put it elsewhere as well. And on the left side, Furious Impulse is how we manage our Fury. The biggest problem with this build is Fury management, as you can imagine, because we're using 2 core skills together with Unbridled Rage. So without any Fury management, by default, these cost 70 plus 50, 120 fury for every single volley of the two. And so we need to reduce their fury cost, first of all, through itemization, but also gain fury on weapon swap. So here's a source of 6 fury on weapon swap, and we'll get another 3 from the Paragon board. And then here is one of the best sustains in the entire game, just because we're spending so much fury. We're healing 9% life, but that 9% actually gets boosted to about 13.5% because of our willpower being about 500%. You can see it says improved healing received by about 50%. So once you try this build, you'll see Invigorating Fury is a tremendous source of healing for the build. It's too bad the game has so much one-shotting, because without that, this build would be even better thanks to this tremendous sustain. Tempered Fury, it would be nice to have because max Fury scales both of our Double Swing and Hoda. Unfortunately, 3 per point is just not good enough. I think Blizz need to buff this a bit. Should be at least 5 per point. Let's quickly go over the Paragon tree. So I like to go through every single armor node. I've prioritized armor heavily, both in my items and in my Paragon skill tree, and you'll notice the tankiness thanks to that. So here you can see we even boost all magic nodes. So you can notice that makes all of these 50 armor nodes into 112 armor nodes. And then this is also our martial to get shot cooldown lowered. For the second Paragon tree, and the order here is really important, you want to get Warbinger. And this is the Paragon tree that's going to boost your max fury by a significant margin. It's about 50, 60 max fury once you get all of these nodes and all of these nodes. I also have a Wrath socketed here for even more fury generation from crit strikes. It also gives us crit damage with core skills, and both of our skills for DPS are core skills, so this benefits both. Resistances currently don't do much, so I've opted to even ignore these 2 skill points, which is kind of silly, honestly, but I'm sure that will get patched out soon. And then the third Paragon board that you want to attach is Weapon Master, and this is really important that you attach it third, because if you attach it last, which is another option if you do these 3 first and then this one last, the requirement for dexterity on these rare nodes will be much higher. And because of it, you'll notice that we've hit 4 rare nodes. You want to make sure that their stat point requirement is attainable. And by attaching it third, you guarantee that that happens. So you can see 340 dexterity, 350, 340 dexterity, 340 willpower. And then the other reason we want Weapon Master is because of the swapping weapon grants you 3 fury. So now we have 9 fury per weapon swap. And so between the 2 hits of Double Swing and Hoda, that's 18 fury. And that gets scaled up through all of our fury generation multipliers and ends up being significantly higher than just 18 fury. Next, we want to hit these armor nodes again. And then some extra damage to elites with extra move speed as well. Solid nodes over here. A little bit of extra damage. Here we're hitting Disembowel, and this is mostly just for the cooldown reduction. We don't really have physical damage over time, so that doesn't really help us. So you want to just exactly meet the 25 willpower requirement. But this Paragon board is also really good because it has another armor node right here. So you want to make sure to hit all of these plus 50 armors. For our fourth Paragon board, we want to get Decimator and use the exploit glyph. You can see which rare nodes I'm hitting. It's very nice to hit this one as well right here. 20% vulnerable damage and 100 armor is a really good rare node right here. And then plus 100 armor extra right there. Next is Bone Breaker, and we attach Mortal Draw. And this adds a lot of DPS to our build as well. Swapping weapons has an 18% chance to cause the skill's damage to critically strike. So this increases our crit chance. It also gives us 162% damage with skills that weapon swap. And that is a really huge number. It is one of the glyphs that didn't get nerfed as hard when the nerf bat came on the glyphs. And I think that was a good choice by Blizz. Weapon swapping isn't really a meta, so I think it's good that it didn't get hit too hard. We also get a bunch of DR over here. And then the final Paragon board is Carnage. We get extra berserking duration. That is very nice. 15 plus 15, 30% berserking right here. A little bit of extra damage reduction from close. And then damage while berserking. And we apply Territorial for a little bit of extra damage reduction against close enemies. So there aren't very many glyphs that give you defensive bonuses. This is one of them. So I want to make sure to get some DR from my glyphs as well. And you'll notice this is the very last Paragon board, so the requirements are a little bit insane. 610 willpower, 630 dexterity, and 620 willpower. So don't feel like you must get these. The damage bonuses and the DR bonuses are not must-have. But yeah, that's basically the Paragon board. I've tried to optimize it as much as possible. Basically, you want to minimize the number of white nodes that you're picking up when you build your Paragon tree. And so I think I've accomplished that fairly well with this one. Now let's talk about the items a little bit. I'll go through the aspects first, and then I'll go through the affixes afterwards. So in terms of aspects, for my weapons, I have the extra damage on stunned enemies aspect for my two-hander. And the philosophy I was going here with was I wanted my two-handers to have aspects that benefit both double swing and Hoda. So here, if the enemy is stunned, both double swing and Hoda are going to get 80% more damage. The other side, I have 50% more attack speed, and we're going to be critting all the time with core skills here. So this is going to have 100% uptime easily. And again, it benefits both core skills. And then you can see I'm using Ramaladni's. And that's to make double swing actually deal a little bit more damage, because double swing doesn't do anything compared to Hoda. Even with Ramaladni's, it is a little bit underwhelming. But with this, it deals 1.6 times the damage because we have about 200 max fury. The weapon itself is not great. The damage bonuses are pretty weak. The only useful thing I would say is the 5% chance to restore primary resource. That's alright, but again, it's just a little bit underwhelming as a weapon. And then I have Battle Mad's affix here to gain another source of berserking. You could drop this, and you could substitute it for even more damage, because we do have a source of berserking through that one-handed mace lucky hit. If you look at that, we have a 10% chance to gain berserking for 1.5 seconds when you hit a stunned enemy. And given how much we're stunning enemies, this is going to help the berserking uptime a little bit. But with this Battle Mad aspect, you basically get 100% uptime on your berserking. On the gloves, I have my Hoda aspect. You can see it's only 50% damage because it's not on a two-hander. But that's generally sufficient because we want to be hitting enemies directly with our Hoda. I've seen recent videos where the actual quaking outwards deals more damage than the Hoda hit itself. But I'm guessing that's going to get patched because it seems kind of silly for it to be the case. I'm getting even more damage from the amulet. I've added Edge Masters for 30% extra damage based on how much primary resource is available. We want to be at max fury when we're hitting regardless, just because Ramaladni's relies on fury at point of hitting, as well as Furious Hoda also looks at your fury at the time of using it. So make sure you have max fury when you're using your skills, and that's going to give you a significant damage boost. For rings, the aspects are exactly what you would expect. The shout aspects. Then I have the armor aspect in my chest. And here we have a secondary source of stun in my helmet. All enemies are going to be bleeding, so that is covered. So basically you just have a 30% unlucky hit to apply stun for 2 seconds. It's great. I'm also using the bubble, and for high tier Nightmare Dungeon pushing, bubble is just so good. It gives you 5 seconds of uninterrupted DPS, and in 5 seconds you can kill a lot with this build, so I strongly recommend it. And then finally we have our move speed on Unstoppable aspect for the boots. In terms of affixes, strength, crit damage, and vulnerability take priority in all 4 weapons. And then you can have like damage to closed enemies. All stats is decent. Core damage is alright. Yeah, there's a bunch of decent options for the 4th affix, but really you want to be getting those 3 affixes lined up. For boots, prioritize fury cost and move speed. A little bit of berserking duration is not bad. And then for all of your armor pieces, I would prioritize % armor, damage reduction, especially damage reduction from close. You want to have that on all of your chest and pants especially. Helmet, you want to get your cooldown reduction. Max fury, those are mandatory. But you can see I have plus % total armor in my helm, in my chest, and in my pants. And that brings me up to 9.5k armor without any potions. With a potion, that's easily over 10k. And then that gets boosted even higher with this disobedience affix. Now for gloves, depending on whether you want to be DPSing with both Hoda and double swing or not, you can aim for both double swing and Hoda skill levels. Or if you just want to use Hoda and rely on that, you can drop the double swing and substitute it for something like lucky hit chance or primary resource on lucky hit. There's a bunch of decent options there. The ring affixes are the ones that you're most constrained on, because there's like 6 or so really strong ones for this build. I would say crit chance and vulnerable damage should take priority. And then there's some really good ones like max fury, resource generation, crit damage. Max life is really good too. So there's a bunch of good options on rings. If you can get a good combination of those, you're going to be in a good spot. And remember, max fury is % damage for us in this build. And then amulet, similar thing. There's a lot of good options, but the top priorities are fury cost reduction, cooldown reduction, and movement speed. I would pick those 3 over everything else. +3 to defensive skills is really strong because it gives us even more DR with challenging shout. Similarly, why you want to have +4 to challenging shout in your chest piece. And then there are some decent passives that you could benefit from getting them in your amulet. Like wall up is good, heavy-handed is good, even concussion is not bad for an even crazier stun chance. In my case, I have no mercy for a little bit of extra 9% crit chance. And then you really don't care about the item power of your rings and amulet, because that only impacts the resistances, and currently resistances are not very useful in this game. So don't worry about that item power. However, item power is extremely significant for your weapons, even more so for your two-handed mace, because that is your Hoda weapon. Your one-handers are also significant if you choose to do damage with double swing. Otherwise, the item power there is less relevant. And then item power for your armor pieces. The most significant one and the most important one to look at is your chest, because that gets the greatest multiplier. You can see armor is a function of your item power here. And then second most important is your helmet. And then pants is third. And then gloves and boots, you can see the multiplier is about 50% of your item power becomes armor. So those are less important. One more important thing with itemization is make sure to get +3 max evade charges on your boots. Those are by far the best implicits on the boots. I've played with the other implicits and they're absolute trash. Make sure to get these ones. For expertise, we run two-handed sword for the source of bleed. We don't really have another source of bleed. You could get it from an aspect as well, but currently we're using this one. If you choose to run this build without relying on double swing damage, you can swap out Ramaladni's for just a normal one-handed sword or a one-handed mace, and you can attach the aspect of dealing additional % damage when you go over max fury. Against stunned enemies, and while you have triple shout, you're gonna be way over max fury, so you're gonna be satisfying that condition all the time, so you're gonna be getting essentially 30% more damage on your Hoda. And honestly, I think that is probably the better way to run the build, unfortunately. Maybe with some balance patches, we'll see a situation where we can actually reliably run 2 core skills with comparable damage. Currently, double swing is, I don't know, something like 25 to 30% of the damage contribution compared to Hoda. And that is mostly because of the Hoda damage multiplier that you know from Furious Hoda modifier. And that's it for the items and skill choices of this build. And then in terms of playstyle, you can attack as much as you want if your triple shouts are on, or if you're attacking a stunned enemy. Otherwise, you kind of have to kite and wait until your cooldowns are up again. Anyway, that's it for the build guide. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll try and push a Nightmare Dungeon clear in the 90s. We'll see if I can get one. So if you're interested in seeing the playstyle live, join me on Twitch and ask any questions you want. Anyways, thank you and take it easy. ごちそうさまでした。